September 10, 1892, The Freeman, Indianapolis, Indiana. Lost relatives. The price of publishing letters of lost relatives is $1 per month in advance. The Freeman goes to all parts of the world and has been the means of bringing hundreds of lost relatives and friends together. I should be pleased to know the whereabouts of Mrs. Anna M. Pope. She was formerly in Augusta, Georgia. Her name before she was married was Miss Anna W. Williams. She married James Pope of Augusta. Any information concerning her whereabouts will be thankfully received by Edward A. Robinson, Company C, 24th Infantry, with United States Boundary Commissions via Bisbee, Arizona Territory. I am in search of relatives from whom I was separated in slavery. I went from the state of Alabama, Barbee County. My owners at that time were Sharps, Bammers, and Franks. My father's name was Jack Ephron. My brothers and sisters' names were Harriet Ephron, Nick Ephron, John Green, and Carr Green. My mother's name was Mary Ephron. My father belonged to the Sharps. I was taken from Alabama and carried to Dykesville, Louisiana. Any information concerning the above will be cheerfully received by Maria Abamier, Dykesville, P.O., Louisiana. I would like to know the whereabouts of some of my people, which, to my remembrance, belonged to a slaveholder by the name of Gamble and lived at DeFate County, Mississippi. My mother's name was Ellen Gamble, father's name Anthony Gamble, and 4 brothers, the oldest, Henry Gamble, next, Ellison, Walter, and Allender, sisters Jane, Molly, Channy, Harriet, Emmeline, and myself, Eliza. Old Gamble had 2 sisters, both married, one named Stewart and the other Walker. To his sister, Mrs. Stewart, he gave myself and sister Jane, and my sisters Channy and Molly to his sister, Mrs. Walker. And my sister Jane was married to a man by the name of Ab. And my people, when learning they were free, left old Gamble's place by night, but could not take me as I was kept up to the house. But I remember that in a short time after they left, my mother sent my sister Molly back after me, but they would not let her have me. Any information concerning any of the persons will be cheerfully received by Mrs. Eliza Dyson, 3113 Bell Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri. Memphis and Holly Springs, Mississippi papers, please copy. I would like to know the whereabouts of my father, mother, and 2 brothers. They were carried from Palmyra, Missouri, a good many years ago. Their names were Thomas and Rhodey Hawkins. Father's name was William Henderson. He belonged to a man in Marion County by the name of Dr. Daniel Johnson. They were carried to Tennessee by the name of Dr. Johnson. The last heard of my father, he was in Chicago and went by the name of Johnson. I was left by my mother in Philadelphia, a little town about 20 miles from Palmyra, Missouri, with Dr. Daniel Johnson. Any information concerning any of these parties will be cheerfully received by Mrs. Mary Smith, Palmyra, Missouri. I would like to find my brother, Thomas Jackson, who left Chatham, Kentucky during the war. When last heard from, he was in California. He belonged to Newt Miller. Any information concerning him will be thankfully received by Margaret Miller, Springfield, Ohio. Anybody knowing anything concerning Buell Chapman will be gladly received by Fanny Bausman, 188 East Elm Street, Columbus, Ohio. I received letters from him in '71 and heard later that he was in the hospital at Cairo, Illinois, but since then I have never heard of him. A sister of his resides at the above. I would like to know the whereabouts of my brother, Morris Jackson, who belonged to Newt Miller of Chatham, Kentucky. His mother's name was Ellen Jackson. He left Chatham, Kentucky with Captain Pillsbury during the war. When last heard from, he was in Boston, Massachusetts. Any information concerning him will be thankfully received by Margaret Miller, Springfield, Ohio. I would like to find my 2 sons, John and Doris Price. They were raised in North Carolina, Rockingham County. Their father's name was Stosh Price. When last heard from, Doris was in Massachusetts. He left after he was free. Any information of either will be thankfully received by Willie Price, 59 South Sycamore Street, Springfield, Ohio. I desire information concerning my mother's aunt, whose name was Lucinda Moore. Her home was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My grandmother's her sister-in-law, whose original name was Mrs. Mary Hill, has not heard from her since before the war. Her brother, George Hill, died about 6 years before the war aboard a steamer en route from St. Louis to New Orleans. His daughter, my mother, now dead, whose name was then Georgiana Hill, was about a year old at the time of his death. Any information of her whereabouts will be thankfully received by Tenny L. Robinson, St. Joseph, Missouri. I would like to inquire for my brothers and sisters. There were 8 of us. We lived in Cambridge, Maryland, with our father and mother, William and Harriet Cornish. I, Priscilla, was sold with Lida, Anna, Mary, Billy, Lucinda, John, and James from Cambridge, Maryland, to Charles Goldsboe. Anna and myself are the only 2 known of. We are living in Hot Springs, Arkansas with our mother. Our father died before the war. Our mother is quite old. Any information concerning any of these persons will be cheerfully received by Mrs. Priscilla Wilson, 21 Crest Street, Hot Springs, Arkansas. I would like to find my mother and 2 sisters. We belonged to a slave owner by the name of Jacob Woodson. He kept a livery stable on Main Street in Richmond, Virginia. We were separated before the war. My mother's name was Mahaly Woodson, and my 2 sisters' names were Margaret and Marinda. Jacob Woodson had 3 sons, Randolph, Pushin, and Chesterfield. At the time of our separation, I was taken to Harrisonburg, Virginia. The last time I saw my mother, she was living on Clay Street, Richmond, Virginia, in 1863. Any information concerning these persons will be thankfully received by George Woodson, Hearn, Robertson County, Texas. I would like to find some of my relatives. My mother, Rose Shields, went to Ben Shields at or near Memphis, Alabama. Charles, Julia Shields, and I went to John Shields near a little town called Industry, Texas. I left 3 cousins in Texas by the names of Lacey, Bob, David, and Abram Shields. At John Shields' death, we went to his children. York Catling was their guardian until their mother married John Holman, after which Ben Shields, their uncle, came and took us away. I married Amanda Sample, a bright mulatto girl. We had no children, but she was about to become a mother. When I left, I took a horse and mule and went to Mexico. Since that time I have wrote, but could find no trace of them. I am anxious to find my wife. Any information will be thankfully received by Thomas Shields, 366.5 Eldorado Street, Stockton, California. Alabama and Texas papers, please copy. I would like to find the whereabouts of my mother, father, sisters, and brothers, or any one of them. We belonged to Dr. Sidney Perry before the war. My father and mother's name is Austin and Zilphia Perry. My sisters' names are Susan, Mary, Tinny, and Millie Perry. My brothers are Adam, Andy, and Dave Perry. Any information anyone can give me about any of the above will be thankfully received by Peter Perry, Cottage Street, Sandusky, Ohio.